In the 16th century, the Ottoman slave trade moved approximately 20,000 people through the port of Kefe every year. Most of them were Slavic. Most of them were young. None of them had a word for what was happening to them because their languages had not yet needed one. You are 15 years old, and you have been walking for 9 days. The name of this place, you will learn it much later, from a man who draws maps for a living, is somewhere in the foothills east of the Carpathian range, in the corridor the Tatars use when they move north into Ruthenia and south again with whatever they have taken. The corridor has a name in Tatar. You do not know it. You know only that the hills to your left in the morning become the hills to your right in the afternoon, and that the road bends south in a way that does not feel like going anywhere you have ever been. You have been counting the days by the knots you tie in the hem of your underskirt. 1 knot each morning when you wake. 9 knots. The cloth is thin and the knots are small, and you press each one between your thumb and forefinger before you stand up, the way your father pressed each bead of the prayer rope he kept hanging by the door in Rohatyn. He pressed each bead and named something he was grateful for. You press each knot and count, because counting is the only thing you have left that is entirely yours. 9. There are 38 of you now. There were 41 when you left Rohatyn, but the man who tried to run was brought back after an hour, and you do not know what happened to him after that. And a woman who was sick from the first day was left at a farmhouse 2 days ago with 2 guards and a brief conversation among the riders that you could not follow. One of the girls near the front of the column said the woman's name was Marta and that she was from a village south of yours, but you did not know her face, and you do not know what became of her. 38. The girl beside you most mornings is named Daria. She is 11 or perhaps 12. She does not know precisely, and she is from your village, and she stopped crying on the 4th day. Not because she felt better, but because her throat had given out. She has dark hair and hands that are still child hands, wide across the palm, and she walks with her chin down. You have taken to walking beside her, not because you spoke of it, but because she moved toward you on the 3rd morning and you did not move away, and that was enough to establish something neither of you has named. You do not comfort her. You do not know how. You have no comfort to give that would not require a language you no longer trust, because the language you speak, Ruthenian, with its fragments of Church Slavonic, its borrowed words from Polish and Latin, belongs to a place that is now 9 days behind you and getting farther. Every word you know in that language points back toward the house with 2 rooms, the hearth, the 3 icons. Every word feels like a direction home. You use the words as little as possible. It hurts less. What you do instead is walk beside Daria and count and watch the guards. There are 14 guards. 8 ride and 6 walk, and they rotate in a pattern you have been trying to understand since the 2nd day. The riders change position every few hours. 2 at the front, 2 at the rear, 4 along the sides, and the walkers stay mostly at the sides and front. The man who leads the column rides a horse the color of river mud and speaks to no one except the rider closest to him, in a language you have been listening to for 9 days without finding a pattern you can hold. On the 2nd day, you identified what you thought was a word for stop. On the 4th day, you identified what you thought was a word for water. On the 7th day, you understood, for the first time, that there was a word that seemed to mean move faster, and a word that seemed to mean the opposite. You hold these 4 possible words like small stones in your hand. You do not know if they are real. You know that if you can find 10 words, you can find 30. If you can find 30, you can find a direction. Your father taught you this without meaning to. He had a method for reading a text in Church Slavonic when he did not fully understand it. You start with what you know. You find the words you recognize. You build outward from those. The unknown shrinks when you name the things around it. You apply this to the language moving over you like weather. You do not know, on the 9th day on this road through the eastern foothills, that the language you are listening to is Crimean Tatar, a branch of the Kipchak family, distantly related to languages spoken across the steppe from here to the borders of China. You do not know that within 2 years you will begin to understand fragments of Ottoman Turkish, which is related to it the way Polish is related to Ruthenian. The same deep structure, different surfaces. You do not know any of this. You know 4 words that may or may not be words, and you count the days. 9. The pass takes 3 days to cross, and the cold comes back on the first night in a way that has no equivalent to anything in the foothills below. You crossed the Carpathians once before, when you were 7, going west to Lviv with your father for a church gathering. You do not remember the cold being like this in May. Perhaps it was not. Perhaps you were inside more of the time, or perhaps you were young enough that the cold registered differently, or perhaps the cold was the same, and what is different now is that you sleep on the ground under a rough canvas shelter with 10 other women, and the ground at this elevation is cold in a way that comes up through the cloth and through the skin and sits against the bone. You sleep curled against the woman named Olena, who is still not spoken. She is from somewhere south of your village, taken from somewhere south. She has brown hair with grey at the temples, which means she is older than you first thought, perhaps 35, and her hands, when they are close to yours in the night, are warmer than yours. On the second night in the pass, you wake before the others, and the stars over the Carpathians are the densest you have ever seen them, white and very close, and for a moment you do not know where you are. You are just a body under a cold sky. Then you know exactly where you are, and the knowing is a weight that settles back onto your chest. You count the stars in the small rectangle of sky visible through the gap in the canvas. You get to 31 before the cloud moves in. The cold is a fact. You manage it the way you manage the counting, not by resolving it, but by accounting for it. In the morning, you move to keep warm, and in the night, you press against Olena. And in the afternoon, when the sun is at its highest, you turn your face toward it and close your eyes for exactly the time it takes to say the full text of the Trisagion from memory. Holy God, holy mighty, holy immortal, have mercy on us. It is the prayer your father said at the beginning of every service. It takes the same amount of time every time. In the time it takes, the sun warms your face to a temperature that is not comfortable, but is a degree warmer than the air. And you stay in that degree for as long as you can. On the third day of the pass, you begin to descend the southern face, and the air changes in less than an hour. Warmer, different vegetation, the trees you do not know the names of, the smell of something that is not pine. You have crossed the Carpathians. You do not know what is on the other side. Your geography ends here. Your father could have told you. He had a map once, drawn in ink on vellum, that he showed you as a child. But the map ended at the mountains. Whatever was south was outside the frame of the map, unlabeled, a margin. You are in the margin now. The plain that opens south of the mountains is wider than anything you have seen, and it does not stop. In Rohatyn, the horizon was always interrupted. Hills, trees, the edge of the forest that ran along the river east of town. Here the land is flat in all directions, and the sky is enormous in a way that feels reversed, as if the sky is the solid thing and the earth is the space below it. You walk through it for 6 days, and the horizon does not change. You begin to understand that the world is larger than your map. On the third day of the plain, you pass through a town large enough to have a market and a wall made of something that is not wood. The wall is packed earth with wood reinforcement, and it surrounds maybe 300 houses. You do not learn its name. The column moves through it without stopping, and the people in the street watch you pass with expressions you read as not surprise, which means this column of people moving south is not unusual in this town, which means this happens often enough to have become ordinary. The girl who translates sometimes, the Greek girl whose name you still do not know, who was taken before and returned for reasons no one explains, catches you looking at the faces in the street and says something very quietly in a Greek that has fragments of another language mixed into it. You do not speak Greek, but you understand, from the way she says it, and the way she does not meet your eyes when she says it, that what she is telling you is not something you will want to know. You look at the faces in the street. They look back. Then the column passes, and the town is behind you and you are on the plain again, and the horizon does not change. On the 6th day, you smell the sea. You have never smelled the sea, but something in your body recognizes it before your mind does. A sharpness in the air that is not rain, and not river, and not any inland water. You know, it arrives before the sea is visible, before anything is visible except flat land and flat sky and the backs of the people walking in front of you. The smell arrives first, like information the body receives before the mind can ask for it. The sea is salt and something underneath the salt that you cannot name, something old, something that has no equivalent in Rohatyn. You breathe it in. The city is called Kefe, and it is larger than any city you have seen, which means it is larger than Lviv, the only city you have seen. You will learn later that Kefe has been an Ottoman city for 43 years, since Mehmed II took it from the Genoese in 1475. You will learn that the port processes more cargo and more people than any port on the Black Sea, except Constantinople itself. You will learn that the slave market here is one of the oldest institutions in the city, operating continuously for over a century, with regulations and customs and fees paid to the city treasury on each transaction. You know none of this on the morning you arrive. What you know is that the city smells of salt and fish and smoke, and something sweet that turns out to be the dye from a cloth merchant's workshop near the port gate, and that the streets are stone in a way that Rohatyn streets are not stone, and that there are more people than you have ever been among at once, moving in all directions, and the noise is a physical thing, layered, languages you cannot separate from each other, calls from the market. A sound from somewhere above you that you will eventually understand is the call to prayer from a minaret, but that now sounds like nothing you have a category for. You arrive in the morning. They sell you on a Tuesday, though you do not know it is Tuesday. The market is near the port. You are in a row of perhaps 20 women. Your feet are bare because your left shoe came apart 4 days ago and you walked the last days with your foot wrapped in canvas from a guard who gave it to you without speaking. The canvas is gone now. The packed dirt under your feet is warm from the morning sun. The man who buys you is not the first to stop. He is perhaps 45. He wears the kaftan of a minor official or a prosperous merchant, and he bargains for longer than the others. You follow the bargaining by tone only. The guard's voice beginning at one level, the merchant's at another, both arriving somewhere between them. The back and forth lasts perhaps 10 minutes. The price is 45 akçe. You do not know what an akçe is. You do not know that 45 akçe is roughly the cost of a good horse saddle, or 3 months of a skilled craftsman's wages, or 17 days' worth of wheat for a family of 4. You will spend the next months learning what things cost in this city, because cost is a form of location, and location is the only map you have. Olenna is not in the row with you. You looked for her when they brought you to the market, and she was not there. You do not know where she was taken or when. There was no goodbye. There is no word in Ruthenian for the specific absence of a person you never spoke to and will never see again. You count the buttons on the merchant's kaftan while he completes the transaction. 11 buttons. Bone, not metal. The third one from the top is slightly larger than the others. He walks you to the harbour. The boat is smaller than you imagined boats could be, and larger than anything you have been near before. You grew up 3 days from a sea you had no picture of. The boat rocks in a way that is not like anything. Not like a cart on a bad road. Not like walking on ice. Not like anything that has a name in your experience. Your body does not know how to adjust to it. On the first day you are sick over the side of the boat, and a woman holds your hair back without speaking. Her hands are dry and her grip is steady, and afterwards she gives you a piece of salted bread, and you eat it, and keep it down. You do not know her name. She has dark eyes and a scar along her left jaw. She does not speak to you again, but you think about her hands on your back for a long time afterward, years afterward, when you were trying to remember what it felt like to be helped by someone who wanted nothing from you. The water of the Black Sea is not black. It is green-grey in the morning and blue-grey in the afternoon, and at night it reflects nothing. You watch it from the side of the boat when your stomach allows, and you try to find a pattern in it the way you have been finding patterns in the language of the guards. But the sea has no pattern you can hold. It moves according to rules you do not have words for. On the second day, you count the ropes on the nearest mast. 11. The boat moves south for 4 days, and on the third day the sea changes. The water becomes a different colour, bluer, with a clarity that the Black Sea did not have, and the air changes too, warmer and drier, and a man on the boat says something to the man next to him and points at the horizon. And though you cannot understand the words, you understand from the gesture that there is something ahead. On the fourth day you see land. It is not land like you have seen land before. It is land that rises from the water in layers, with walls along the shore that are taller than anything built from stone you have ever seen, and above the walls the shapes of buildings that have no equivalent in your memory. Domes, a word you do not yet know in Turkish, but will learn is kubbe, rising above the skyline in groups, and thin towers that are also a shape without a name in your language. The thing you notice first is not the walls or the domes. The thing you notice first is the sky. Above Constantinople, above Constantinople, above the city that has been called the center of the world by 4 different civilizations, the sky is the pale blue of early morning over Rohatyn on an April day. The same blue, the exact shade. The color the sky goes in the last moment before the sun is fully up, when the dark is leaving and the color has not yet deepened. You have kept your promise to yourself for 53 days. You have not cried since the first night on the road when your mother's hand over your mouth was still something you could remember as a sensation. You have counted instead. You have listened. You have tied knots. You do not cry now. But something happens in your chest that is not crying and is not relief and is not fear, a shifting of some weight that has been sitting in the same place for 53 days, and for a moment, looking at that sky over a city you cannot name in any language you own, you feel something that your father would have called the presence of God, and that you would have agreed with before the raid, and that now you have no words for. The boat moves toward the city. You put your hand on the rope nearest you and hold it. The rope is rough and salt-stiff, and it is the first thing you have touched in 53 days that was not ground or canvas or another person's skin, and it is solid in the way that only things made by human hands are solid, and you hold it for as long as you can, for the whole approach across the Bosphorus, feeling the water move through it, feeling the city getting larger. You come through a gate near the harbour that faces the Bosphorus. The gate has a name you will learn much later. The street beyond it smells of salt and charcoal and something sweet that is the same smell as Kefe, but more of it, concentrated, layered with other smells, baking bread, animal dung, the particular smell of a large number of people in a hot city in July. You are 15 years old, and you have never been in a city with this many people, and your body does not know how to move through it. You move the way you have moved for 53 days, with your chin down, watching the feet of the person in front of you. The building they bring you to has walls covered in tiles. You have never seen anything made of tile before. In Rohatyn, the floors are wood and packed earth. These tiles are blue and white, and they cover the wall from the floor to above your head in a pattern that repeats. You count the repetitions without deciding to. Geometric, precise, the same pattern 12 times across and 9 times up. Blue and white. The color of the sky you came from. The color of the sky over the harbor you arrived through. A woman comes. She is perhaps 50. She looks at you with the assessment you have learned to recognize and endure, the one that registers your height and your teeth and your hands as information. She has a pen and a ledger and she says something. The Greek girl who has been near you since the ship translates in fragments, quietly. Your name, she says. Give her your name. You give her your name. The woman writes something in a script you cannot read. It is Ottoman Turkish, written in Arabic letters, though you do not know this. It looks nothing like Cyrillic, nothing like the Latin you know from the liturgy. It is written right to left, which your eye keeps trying to correct for, pulling toward the left margin where beginnings should be. The woman says something else without looking up. The Greek girl is quiet for a moment before she translates. Your name is Hürrem now, she says. It means the laughing one. The woman with the pen moves to the next girl. She does not look up. She does not check whether the name fits. You say the name quietly, to yourself, the way you have been saying possible words on the road. Not to speak it, but to feel its shape. Hürrem. 2 syllables. The first one like a breath. The second one like a question. It means the laughing one, and you are not laughing. You count the tiles on the wall in front of you one more time. All 108 of them. The blue and the white. The repeating pattern that someone made by hand and fired in a kiln somewhere in this empire. Each tile the same distance from the next. Each one in its exact, correct place. That night, you sleep on a mat in a room with 11 other women. The room has 4 small windows near the ceiling. Through them, the sky is the same pale blue. It always is at that hour, the hour before dawn when the dark is leaving. You count the women. 11, 12 including yourself. You count the windows. 4. You count the days since Rohatyn, pressing the knots at the hem of your underskirt. 53. And then you say the new name one more time, quietly, into the dark of a room in a city whose name you do not yet know in any language, in an empire whose borders you cannot draw, in a building made of tiles the color of every sky you have ever stood under. Hürrem. Somewhere on a wall in this building, in a script you cannot read, in a language you do not yet speak, a woman with a pen has written a name in the place where your name used to be. You will spend the next 14 years learning what was written. You hold the hem of your underskirt between your fingers. 53 knots. You do not untie them.